We know that it is hospitality, it is food, especially for foodies, that makes a city. And if we can have more people, backing that and making that, more of a thing for a city, I think the better off any city will be.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Dani Valent and you're listening to Dirty Linen. I love saying those words. Thanks so much for being with me. I am always up for a food chat and it's great to have your company for this one today. We are heading to Queensland, to Brisbane, and our guest is Samantha Parish. Sam is an extremely excellent exemplar of the fact that a career in food can mean so many different things, sometimes at the same time. I recently hung out with Sam in Brisbane when I was there for the Food Connect Foundation Summit. We talked about all the important things that are happening in Brisbane now leading up to the Olympics, all the opportunities that there are for food systems change. And it was fantastic to chat to Sam as part of a panel where she spoke about her new book, Chefs Eat Brisbane. Sam, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited.
Well, I'm excited too. So you're a chef by trade. You've done a lot of work in publishing. When you stand at the school pickup gate and someone asks you what you do, how do you answer and how do you feel about that question?
Oh, it's so loaded, isn't it? Yeah, I find that question incredibly hard to answer, and I end up just saying, "Look, I work in food," because it's a tricky one. Because I wear too many hats sometimes that it's not worth even explaining, I guess, at school pickup. But yes, I am chef by trade, but then I also do a lot of recipe writing. I would say my craft is more that recipe writing, recipe development world. But then, as you've said, I wear a lot of those other hats of I'm editing recipes for chefs. I'm also, marketing and distributing my cookbook personally. I was carrying 23-kilo boxes last week into town hall. So that's what it takes to get an independent book out there. And then, this week alone, I'm working at Oz Harvest. I'm one of their teacher chefs at Oz Harvest. So I've got a shift there this week. I'm working on recipes for ABC, so developing and shooting them at home. I'm editing a cookbook for Martin Boetz, which is really exciting. Really, really, really cool recipes. And I just absolutely love his food. So that just makes me hungry all the time. So yeah, school pickup, I kind of just say, look, I work in food and let's not go beyond that because too hard basket.
I love it though. I mean, you're really eating up life and food is just the best way to do that. There are so many opportunities and I'm sure it does feel like a bit of a tricky juggle at times. I mean, I think of my life, I guess I'm in and around food, mostly the media side of it, but sometimes I think about my world as there's a whole bunch of like helium balloons just like gently bouncing on the ceiling and they've all got these strings hanging down and my job is to go around as calmly as possible just to gather all these balloons into a little bunch and just hold them there.
Yes, that is literally, yes, that sounds exactly right.
Let's talk about the book first because it is just an amazing survey of the Brisbane food scene. It feels like Brisbane is in a really exciting moment. All those sort of old-timey ways of describing it, Australia's biggest country town, all that kind of stuff, it just doesn't make sense anymore. It is a thriving metropolis with so much happening in a food sense. And this big looming event of the Olympics 2032, it's a little bit fraught. It's very exciting. Is there going to be lasting impact? Is it just going to be a big influx and then, some like paper cups and plastic forks to clean up afterwards? Like, what is it really going to mean? But you have sort of really captured a moment in Chefs Eat Brisbane. So let's start there. What is this book and what does it say about Brisbane?
Look, I think especially with this book, it's capturing, like you said, it's capturing a moment. It's kind of capturing that point in history, I think, that before Brisbane is kind of at a turning point. But it's also paying tribute to all the chefs that have already paved the way for Brisbane. Like you said, big country town is kind of what we always are known as. But I said this in the book, I think this is our strength. We are more humble. We are the underdog. And I think that works in our favour. I love cities that are the underdog. I think it's just something that as I've become older, like I lived in Christchurch before here, and again, underdog city rebuilding, and Brisbane building, just like you said, a metropolis city, and just the food culture up here is so incredibly diverse, and really at a point, like you said, with the Olympics where it's backing itself. And yes, there is a lot of unknowns as to what the Olympics will bring and the aftermath of the Olympics. It's easy to sit there with rosy-coloured, goggles on and go, it's going to be amazing. I'm sure there are going to be parts of it that will be a learning curve for Brisbane. But we have to live in hope. And I think it already is bringing a lot of confidence to hospitality venues, taking riskier moves, doing more interesting kind of venues that maybe they wouldn't have if not the Olympics being on the way. There's more investment. And even when I wrote this book, I got the mayor to do the forward on the book, and it wasn't out of political reasons. It was literally that I wanted some civic recognition of what hospitality does for a city. And to me, probably similar to you, that we know that it is hospitality, it is food, especially for foodies, that makes a city. And if we can have more people, backing that and making that, more of a thing for a city, I think the better off any city will be. So, I think, the Olympics is on its way, but let's focus on the food.
I'm all about that, Sam, as you well know. So take us on a little jaunt around Brisbane. I mean, without asking you to pick any favourite children, there are so many great chefs and restaurants and recipes in this book. But tell us about some of the chefs, some of the restaurants, some of the cuisines that you've discovered in the writing of this book.
Yeah, without picking favourites, there's a few that stand out, even currently. So in New Farm, there's Winifred's, which has, in the Southern Hemisphere, the biggest champagne, what would you call it, cellar collection. So Megan Nunn, who owns it, she is a champagne enthusiast beyond words. And she has built, I think I refer to it as a cathedral of champagne in the book. It is the most phenomenal, beautiful, restaurant. The service there is impeccable. And they're just doing very cool, very unique to Brisbane things. Actually, Matt Preston was up recently and I took him there to show him, one of the really cool restaurants, obviously, that I think is still a little bit undercover in Brisbane. Well, in the rest of the world anyway, in Australia anyway. Some other ones, I just think there is Tartufo and Moda, which have been operating in Brisbane for over 10, 15 years. It's somewhere in that, it's in the book. The two of them, so Tony Pukeko, I butcher his last name every time I say it, and then Javier, they are both Spanish, Italian, beautiful restaurants, always packed, and just doing their food with no questions. They're not trying to hype. They're not trying to, get TikTok followers. They are just doing the most beautiful food. Tony's rabbit pasta is one of the best dishes in Brisbane, I would say. And then at Javier's restaurant, he's using his Mabrasa oven, so all wood-fired, beautiful steaks coming out of there, and just a very, very Brisbane venue in that it's steaks, but with that Spanish influence, so like chimichurris and beautiful, beautiful produce that he really highlights the scenic rim. So they're two, kind of the godfathers of Brisbane, I think, from a food or chef's perspective. And then obviously Joy, Sarah, just beautiful 10-seater restaurant if you can get in. It's tricky, but she is just doing such cool things, and the way she's balanced her life with chefing and making it work for herself, I just absolutely love what she's doing Catherine at Moscone. I mean, this is me trying to highlight women chefs because I'm all about that. But they just opened Bistrotino next door, which is another really cool venue. But Moscone is just diehard Italian, beautiful tiramisu. The recipe's in the book. I'm sure oh my God, just amazing food. A lovely place to just sit on the walkway and just watch New Farm roll past, which is one of my favourite things to do because there's some interesting humans in New Farm. And yeah, I guess Southside, I mean, I just love what the guys at Sokyo Brisbane are doing. They are a really cool duo. So Alex and Tuan, they've got a really interesting background. So Tuan is actually Vietnamese Italian and works in a Japanese restaurant and can speak fluent Italian, but is making some of the most beautiful, Japanese sushi. And it's just like those boys together is just such a dynamic duo. I am so, so keen to see what they do in the future because working together, they are just amazing. And then, Poloni, I don't know, I could just keep going. There's too many. Montrachet is just a French institution if you want beautiful French food. But yeah, we've got it all. We've got it all in Brazil.
You sure do. I mean, what a great rundown. So Sarah Baldwin was a recent guest on Dirty Linen, so we'll put a link to that in the show notes. Her restaurant is unique, and I love that you've highlighted the way that she balances her life. I think, you might think almost a solo operation would be a way to never have any time off, but she's really structured it so that the restaurant serves her life rather than the other way around, which I think is, no matter what industry you're working in, it's very instructive and inspiring. And you mentioned Martin Boetz earlier for the recipes that you're working with him
and short
on.
grain.
Yeah, so short grain. We followed the pre-opening of short grain and checked in with Marty. I haven't checked in with him for a while. It's a good reminder to dip back into that ongoing conversation. But yeah, we had a series on Dirty Linen following the opening of short grain and just the decisions he made along the way. It was really interesting insight into the build of a restaurant and all the just all the countless decisions and that go into it. So it was very satisfying and so nice to see that restaurant going from strength to strength.
Yeah, they're actually doing I'm sure I can say this, but him and Gerald from the 56, they're doing a collab dinner in October that I'm going to be emceeing, but it's they're not just collabing, but they're working together on each dish. So each of them are bringing in the source of the protein. It's going to be a really cool dinner.
And where will it be, Sam?
It'll be at Short Grain. It's on Tuesday. I'm pretty certain it's the 26th of October, but I can clarify.
Sounds so good. I mean, you mentioned a few of Brisbane's classics and some of the newer restaurants. What sort of city is Brisbane in terms of, honouring its heritage and, staying true to the classics or just being about, the next hot thing in the hype?
There's definitely, there is quite a lot of the hype, I would say, in Brisbane. As in there are more restaurants opening with that kind of vein of existence. But the old and true restaurants aren't going anywhere and they're also probably more frequented than like these newer ones. But in saying that, I am all for, there are some really cool new openings like Vena. I was at La Lune on the weekend, which just got bought by new owner, I think they're from Canberra, I believe. But lots of really cool younger hospo people that are coming in the ranks. And I think because of the Olympics, they're kind of maybe getting backed in a better way and they can actually open these really cool, funky wine bars and, like there's really cool Mexican spots opening up in Fortitude Valley. But yeah, there is quite a mix of new and trendy and just people doing really good food, honouring producers in a lovely way. So it's actually quite a lovely mix. It's funny, Tony from Tartufo, he said in the book that he loves Brisbane in that it kind of feels like Sydney 10 years ago. At that point where you can kind of get what you need, enough of everything and not be bombarded with so many restaurants at once. And so I kind of love that. Yeah, I think that Brisbane is in that really good balancing place of new and I hate the word old, but new and still existing.
Established.
Yeah, established. That's the word I was looking for. Yeah.
Sam, let's talk about the recipe writing side of what you do, because, I mean, we are bombarded with recipes these days. We're in, the era of content wherever you look. What do you think separates an average recipe from a great recipe?
I think as a recipe writer, when you're writing a recipe, you're always thinking about knowing what to add so that you want to find the point in the recipe where you know someone could F it up, more or less. Like this could go wrong here. I think a good recipe writer knows how much detail to add in that section or what not to add. Sometimes too much can actually be confusing as hell. But there is an art to recipe writing, which I think is getting lost right now a wee bit in the content saturation that exists in the world. But the good recipe writers, I think they're the recipes that are being actually cooked and cooked again and again and again. But I think because recipe writing is, a text, I think there's now recipe videoing writing, as in the video of a recipe, that is almost a whole other level of how to write a recipe as well. And, what visuals you want to be cueing on if it's a TikTok or it's a reel or whatever. So, yeah, it is in quite an interesting place. I could put into ChatGPT, write me a chimichurri recipe, and yeah, it's going to spit something out. But is that honouring, and this is what the book is about, it's honouring chefs and what they've learned to get to know that, to actually understand that knowledge, to master what a chimichurri is, to know where it came from, to know what they can actually add, and like how to pivot in a recipe. Only someone that's mastered cooking can actually pivot in the right way. ChatGPT is going to tell you to chuck in, who knows, like something wild like rosemary, or actually that's totally fine. You can totally do that. But you know what I mean? Like it doesn't actually, it's never going to be able to tell that story or actually taste it to know why that is important and should be in there. So I'm hopeful and hanging on to the fact that it does take people who have kind of mastered that skill set to kind of keep the right recipes out there and existing. But I love recipes in that they are the most amazing way to storytell. And I think, it all comes back to that as a food writer, as a chef or whatever. It does come back to that storytelling ability, and a recipe can really tell so many stories, and it actually goes into someone's actual home. So taking down that fourth wall and really entering someone's world, which I love about a recipe.
Yeah, it's an amazing exercise of trust, at its best. I always feel such a responsibility if I'm putting a recipe out there because, people, they could choose any recipe and they choose yours. They buy ingredients, they set aside the time to cook it, and they're going to serve it to someone, whether it's themselves or their friends and family. It's an incredibly it's a warm transaction at its best. It's a warm connection. I got a message the other day from someone I barely know, like a friend of my sister's ex. And she found me on Messenger and sent me a photo of a recipe that my mum had handwritten that fell out of an old recipe book of hers. And, it was enough of a moment for her to take a photo, find me, whoever she could find in the family, send it to me. And I told my mum about it. She was like, oh, yes, I remember her. And I look at it and my mum's handwriting has changed. It's probably 20 years ago. My mum's handwriting, she's older now. Her handwriting's a little bit different. It's, like there are, I suppose like your book, there are sort of, they capture a moment in time. But they also are this real hand-to-hand connection at their best. And, I think, ChatGPT is never going to have that. They also do archive a moment in other senses. I think of an old scrapbook of my grandmother's that I found, and she had clipped a recipe from like the 1950s from a magazine, and it had a recipe for mackerel, and it was just like, so something with mackerel, remove the liver and kidneys or whatever it is. Do fish have kidneys? Anyway, remove the liver. And I was just thinking, well, no one today is buying a mackerel and removing the liver. I was just like, wow, that just really tells you so much about how times have changed and, you know, what people were thinking about and cooking, and so good.
Yeah, like even because I started recipe, so I started in the women's weekly test kitchens, which was like my kind of where I started recipe writing. And even that sort of recipe writing compared to what I do now is like polar, you know, completely different, I would say. Probably more intro heavy and way more detailed in method, because we can't actually assume anymore that people know how to poach or how to, you know, methods of cookery are actually way more or way less available to people, like in terms of what they already know. So there's a bit more holding hand and talking them through the process of actual culinary, you know, methods, which is lovely and awesome, but also a little bit sad that, like, maybe from a society's point of view, we've lost that cooking ability, which, is probably, that's another sad part of where food is kind of in a way heading, but fingers crossed we can change that.
Yeah, it's so interesting, Sam, you're sort of pointing to, you know, our society is very fragmented these days. And in some ways, that's kind of, there's a positive to that. It means there's a lot more diversity and, you know, a lot more people who bring different types of knowledge into their daily lives and their kitchens. But at the same time, that fragmentation means that, people are at such different stages of learning. Like, you just can't assume that a 20-year-old knows how to make grill a steak or poach an egg or whatever it is. But, you know, I guess, you know, in that Women's Weekly Test Kitchen, which, oh my God, how iconic, I want to know more. Like, there would have been a lot of assumed knowledge about, you know, I guess it's housewives reading this, and they would, for the most part, they would know how to cut an onion or poach a fish or whatever it is. So, take us back to that time. Like, tell me all about the Women's Weekly Test Kitchen.
It was cool. I was in the days, Pamela Clark, she was still there, but she was less involved. But I was working with like the New Idea team at the time, a lot of like midweek recipe writing, which actually in hindsight, yes, more of what I do now anyway. But I got to work on a lot of the books as well with Sophia Young. She was an incredible food director at Women's Weekly Test Kitchens during the time. A lot of cakes. Actually got to do some stuff for Thermomix while I was there, which is kind of hilarious that now what that's become. And I actually was there that I met a lot of food stylists that I now got to work with. Like, when I was in testing in kitchens, Kirsten Jenkins was in the next booth in front of me, and I never felt so like in the food, like I was like gobsmacked that Kirsten Jenkins was in the kitchen at the same time as me. Funnily enough, then I got to work with her for 3 years when I was at Delicious. But she's an incredible recipe tester. She had timers out. She was, you know, so like every note she'd be making notes. So I learned a lot from her. And actually I met Justine Poole when I was there. So then that's when I then got to go and work at Donna Hay. And that, again, in those test kitchens, that is another learning curve of measuring and doing 100 of something. I think there was one time where I had to make like 6 pavlovas for a shoot so that we could pick the best one to go on. You know, I think it was an advertisement for Waitrose or something. But that was such a cool learning curve. I mean, test kitchens are the coolest. Like, it's kind of sad that they maybe won't exist. I mean, I hope they'll exist in the future, but I guess less of a thing these days with magazines and stuff not existing as much. But I loved working in test kitchens. Like, when I was at Delicious, I got to cook. Like, a lot of my role was testing any chef's recipes that came in. So I was cooking, you know, Josh Nyland's recipes before St. Peter even came out. Like just the coolest stuff that, you know, what I got to learn from them and what their cookery style is, was like that access that I got was pretty cool. And I think actually that's what makes a really good recipe writer, but also a good chef, is cooking other people's recipes. And most of these recipes that I was cooking were like very chef written, gobbledygook, where you're feeling, not Josh's, shouldn't say that, but other people's, where you're filling gaps and you're trying to gauge, oh, that's what they're trying to get to. I'm just going to add this little thing in there so that they actually get to where they want to be. And then from our point of view, because we're magazines, and then we're always thinking about how it's going to be styled, and all that. But I had some pretty cool mentors during my time. Like I got to work under Warren Mendez, who now has his own TV show. Matt Preston was always around. Phoebe Wood, who now is running Quite Like. So everyone's kind of gone on to do really cool things in food. So yeah, I was pretty lucky in those days.
Yeah, it just sounds like such an incredible foundation to leap off into a million different directions, as indeed you have done. And yeah, I also lament the demise of those test kitchens, to some degree. They're still out there in some form, but media is really scrambling for resources these days. And just, to think about someone merrily making 6 pavlovas so that you could choose the best is it's just like a tale from the history books.
I know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Even having 6 ovens, like amazing. Like there's 6 ovens I could use. They were all Smeg. It was amazing.
Well, Sam, I think you've done so much and you're doing so much at the moment. Like, what do you think's next for you?
Good question. I don't know, and I'm actually starting to think that that's okay. I think I have often compared my career to maybe someone who has a very clear career trajectory. There are people that have normal jobs that, that's their next step up and that's where they'll go next. Whereas as I've gotten older, I'm realizing it's okay to not have a clear idea of where I'm headed. I will just continue to like I said in the book, find the best food, you'll find the best people. And if we can tell more of those stories, and how I'll do that, I don't know, but finding ways to tell more meaningful stories about people doing really good things in food. And whether that is, through the book or through working at Oz Harvest or through helping other chefs write recipes because they don't have the time. I'm all for that sort of going in that general direction and never having an answer for school pickup, really. What I do for a living.
I feel so aligned with you on all of that, and especially about, find the best food, you find the best people. Like, why do you think that food is such a good way to connect?
I think because it's literal connection. Like, it's not. There's no way around it. Like when you eat or when you, even working in a restaurant, the camaraderie that you have in a kitchen, the camaraderie you have on a floor when you're working the room or service, or even just at the table eating, there is nothing better than coming together and eating an incredible meal with incredible drinks and that will always be, I think, most of my best memories will be having really beautiful meals with people and tasting, culture through what is available on the plate. But yeah, I still think there is a bit of a missing link. And, sometimes it can be overdone, overtelling people's stories, but I just think, can that be overdone? I think removing that fourth wall from a kitchen into the dining room and allowing a diner to actually have a little taste of where that chef who's cooked that meal has come from or what it took for them to get there is a really good thing, especially for industry. It is a tough gig, owning, operating, working in restaurants, in cafes, in food. I take my absolute hat off to owner-operators and chefs in general that are in it and doing it. I have done it. I know how bloody hard it is. So I just think the more we can prop these guys up and give them, what they're doing and how important it is for the cities that we're in, I just think, more of that. And in the right way, like not just for the sake of it, but making them feel good about what they're doing so that they continue to do it and we can eat really yummy food.
Yeah, so beautiful. And I guess, there are ways of breaking down that connection in a restaurant. I think about Sarah Baldwin at Joy, where it's a very personal experience and you do have time to chat to the chef and restaurateur. But you've done that as well in Chefs Eat Brisbane, where you're taking us into the kitchen, giving us an insight into the backstory of those chefs and restaurants and sharing recipes that give us, yet another way to understand, the way they're cooking and thinking about food from the inside. It's lovely job. Congratulations. And thanks for speaking to it so well, Sam. It's really lovely to have this chat. So next time I come to Brisbane, where are we going to go?
Oh, I really want to get to Bistro Tino because that is new and all the hype right now is kind of in there. Where else would I take you? Piloni, I would definitely take you there, which is in West End, which I kind of like. There's just too many. Gerald at the 56, his duck is insane. The steak selection at Walters is like incredible. We weren't allowed to take photos of their steak setup, but oh my God, it's like the aging process it's half of what the chefs do is actually just determining when their steak's going to be ready. There's too many. And there'll probably be more by the time.
That's so true. All right. Well, I'm going to need more than a couple of days, it sounds like, Sam. But thank you so much for sharing with us today. Really wonderful to have you on Dirty Linen.
No, thank you so much. Honestly, I know that every chef in this book really looks up to what you do and what you are putting out into the world. So I think they'll all be stoked to hear that we were on the podcast.
Oh, that's so nice. Thank you. This is Dirty Linen. I'm Dani Valent. We bring you untold stories from the food world. Real, raw, unafraid, hopeful. We're driven by a belief that food provides endless opportunities for learning, connecting, and creating the world we want to live in. Delicious, open-hearted, meaningful. If you know a story that needs telling, get in touch. Write to dirtylinen@deepintheweeds.com.au. Thank you for listening.
This is a Deep in the Weeds production.